Welcome to the Bet On Me podcast, the ultimate resource for softball players looking to take control of their training and reach their full potential. I'm your host, Krista Stoker, and on this show, we'll be discussing everything from taking a holistic approach to your training to data-driven strategies for maximizing and growing yourself not only on the field, but off. At S2 Breakthrough, we believe that athletes should lead their own journey and push past any perceived ceilings on their talent. So join us as we explore the world of softball player development and help you bet on yourself. Because when you bet on yourself, you can't lose. Super excited about this episode. I have Coach Bloomer here from South Carolina. We've known each other for a few years, I guess. As I think I first met you when we were at PGF Nationals one year. And you were just got your job at Duke, and so we've chatted over the years. I've learned a ton from you, so super excited to have you. So maybe if you just want to tell the listeners a little bit about your journey, sort of your coaching journey, where you started and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It seems like we've known each other forever now at this point. So I started off, literally I was 18 years old. It's been a long journey. So I was 18 years old. I had a younger sister, and we lived in a place where fast pitch wasn't real popular. It just kind of started up, and she decided she wanted to pitch of all things. And there were no pitching coaches. There was nothing. And so I was a catcher. I was a baseball catcher. And so there was just a lot of time with me sitting in the yard while she was trying to learn how to pitch and break the windows. So mom was mad. And then I just I went off to college, and I had some small schools that had said they might be interested in me playing. And I just decided I just didn't really want to do that. And fast pitch came into the high school, and my dad called and said, "Hey, you want to help me coach your sister's team?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And so I was literally 18 years old coaching my little sister's, little team. And I just kind of fell in love with it. Being a baseball guy, I just felt like the speed of it was just so attractive to me. And so did that for a little bit and went to school, became a teacher. I was a volunteer at my high school, coached high school for a long time. Was fortunate to find some places that we'd had some success, and did everything in travel from 10 and under all the way up to 18 and under and everything in between. And those were two totally different kind of dynamics, the high school and the travel, but I loved them both. And then, I'd had some situations where I thought maybe I would get into the college game, and then, it just didn't work out. And I was kind of in a place where I'd started my own little private business, just doing instruction. I was going around working college camps. I'm still doing travel, trying to work to get kids placed where I thought they were good fits for them. And then, I got a call from Coach Young at Duke. She asked me if I was interested. I felt like at that point in my life, if I was going to try to make the jump, that was kind of the call to do it. So, my wife and my two boys said, "Yeah, let's try it." And so we did. And, it's that unknowing of, is it going to work at this level that, everyone would always tell me, like, I just don't think your stuff works at the next level. That only works because it's at high school or it's at travel, and it won't work there. And so I said, well, we're going to find out. And so we went there and had a great 3 years there, enjoyed my time there, loved those players. They were great young women to be around, and, the program had some success that was, unprecedented. And so enjoyed it. And then, had an opportunity here with Coach Beverly Smith called me up and said, "Hey, would you be interested in talking?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll listen." And, came here, and it just felt like, for me, it just felt like a really good fit with what she was trying to do and what we were trying to get it turned to. And I think we can win here. And so now I'm here, and we're trying to get some things going here. And, we start off conference play this week.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually didn't know how you got into coaching story. I'm smiling because my brother got into coaching a very similar reason, sort of started my travel program at the time because there wasn't one.
Yeah.
And then he went off to college and became a volunteer assistant for the softball team at Truman State, and sort of the rest is history, which ultimately led me to it. So that's a great story. I remember probably the first time I met you in person. So I think we probably had talked before this, or at least seen each other on like Twitter or, social media or something. But my team, so the year we met, 2019 probably, my travel team, which was a first year 16 years at the time, was at PGF Platinum Nationals. And we had actually gotten an at-large bid, and my team initially kind of pushed against going. And I was like, no, we're going, and what people will see about my teams now is that we
we ride the year a little more like a college program almost. So sometimes our falls are a little bit more like 500, and we typically finish the summer strong. But this was early in that journey, and so people were like, "We're like a 500 team. We're not going to nationals." And so we went, and our pool games you came to watch, and we were chatting, and you said, "This team could win this tournament," and I was like, "Really?" And you're like, "Yeah, this team could really win this tournament," and we ended up getting second. And so I remember thinking, it was nice, just an outside reflection of things. And I always have those interactions with you, just super genuine. So I really appreciate that. So on that topic,
I remember that now. I actually remember the field, and it was a talented team.
Yeah, they were.
Speaking about some of those players, but it was a talented team.
Yeah. And I remember the reason you said, which I think will lead into a nice question next, which is my team played very independently. And so the game that you were at, they were doing delayed steals, and they were doing straight steals, and we were just taking extra bags, and we were doing a lot of things. And you and I were just chatting. So clearly I wasn't giving signals. And it was, very clear that they were doing those things. So I think you said, teams that play like this can win tournaments like this. And so that I think leads nicely to the next question. For someone who's and you kind of alluded to the fact that maybe people thought it wouldn't work at the next level and that type of thing. But what are maybe some things you've seen differences from sort of the high school level, whether it's travel ball, high school, into this college scene that you've coached, of maybe what are the things the kids come prepared for, they're ready for, or some of the big holes you see? Like, what's that transition like? What are some things that athletes really need to think about? You can keep it hitting focused or hitting and culture focused, but what are things, the differences between those, the biggest differences you see?
Yeah. So, I'll generate this kind of directed towards the student athletes listening. I think the biggest thing, I think there's two things that I think get lost, I think, in the process. I think kids come in, I think, expecting it to be just like their environments they've been in. And you're going to walk into an environment, and it doesn't matter what program you go to. It is going to be different than anything you've done before, because it is something different than anything you've done before. It is, you're coming in and you're a student athlete, and your life kind of tends to all of a sudden revolve around generally two things. And especially at this time of the year in the spring, it's softball in school. We're on spring break right now, and, most of our campus has gone to a beach somewhere to work on their suntans and get refreshed. And we've got 5 games this week, and we open up conference play. And so understanding, like, every single thing you do has to be designed to putting yourself in position for success academically and athletically. And that's kind of what your focus is. And, even the best at the best travel ball levels, like I think the best teams try to create environments where it's very super competitive, and they're holding them accountable on a daily basis to the things they're doing. Maybe they're having them stay in rooms together on the road if they can. Everybody's structure is a little different, but it's still like what they eat, when they're setting up to do their study hours, when they're getting treatment before the game, when they're getting treatment after the game. Every single thing is kind of laid out for them. And that structure for some is awesome because they've never been structured, but for others, it's like overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And so I think learning how to time manage before you ever get to our level, and having a planner where, this is what my day is going to look like, I think is one of the biggest things that our kids struggle with when they come in, because they walk in and it's kind of like, okay, tell me what I'm supposed to be doing. And we're hitting it running. The fall is where we learn so much about our kids, and they learn about the system, and then we start to mesh it all together, but we literally hit it running. And so I think structure is really, really important. I think the other thing to remember is that I always felt like at the high school level and the travel ball level, and I was fortunate, I was able to coach some really talented players and have some success, but the day in, day out grind, really, truly, at the high school and travel ball level, you're not going to see it the way you do it here. It's, in the summer, I remember we played all the tournaments everyone else played. In a summer, we might see on a good, really competitive summer, you might see 10 arms that were pretty good. And you might see 5 that were like elite. We're going to face in the next month, we're going to face that many.
Right.
It's just like the volume of good at this level is just so much higher. And it doesn't mean just because we're in the SEC, although, we feel like our conference is kind of loaded with talent, but it's in all the conferences, the Big Ten, the ACC, the Pac-12, and I think even more and more, I think when we talk about mid-majors, the level of arms and pitching in those levels has really, really increased. So you're going to find almost every weekend you're facing, for us, there's going to be an arm that's going to be out there that's going to cause you some type of difficulty. And I think at travel in high school, you can just out-talent kids at times, which allows you to not have to be completely locked in every single game and not come like totally with a plan of approach of this is what we need to do today to have success. And if we don't do that, we're probably not going to have the success we're looking for. There are very few teams that even at our level who can just show up and play, and so I think that's a big one that I would advise kids, like just how you prepare. I think I have my own ideas on the whole travel ball structure and how that's done. I think if we're trying to get kids prepared for what they're doing here, I think if that's the guys that we're saying like, okay, we're using travel ball to get kids prepared for college, then there's a total overhaul that needs to be done, because we never would do what travel ball teams do. We would be fired, and there's NCAA rules and regulations. Player, for the players' health and well-being, we would never be playing 6 games in 2 days. We'd never be playing at 8 a.m. in the morning. There's just a lot of things there, and so I think that's a big one in terms of just preparing, structuring your time. I think nutrition is like the nutrition and the mental side of sports are like the untapped things to me, because we talk about getting bigger and stronger. You're never going to maximize that if you're not eating well. You're not eating the types of food you need to be eating. It's hard when they're in travel ball. They've got 3 games. They've got an hour break. And so they just go to the local
the pretzel. Get a pretzel to stand.
Nachos or, I think Chick-fil-A could just market the travel ball tournaments, because that's where everyone comes into. But I think there's that. I think the other thing to understand if you're a kid that's trying to get to our level is that your struggles are our kids' struggles. I think sometimes they look at our players and think that, they've got it all figured out. Our kids have the same struggles. Like, I'm talking and having the same conversations with our players that I had when I was coaching travel ball in between games, sitting in the bleachers when I was coaching at high school level. And I had anywhere from 7th graders to 12th graders in my program. It's the insecurities. It's the unknown. It's like, am I good enough? Can I do this? I'm 0 for 6. And, my dad is texting me like how it's my mom's wondering, like all the parents that it's all that stuff that you're dealing with. It doesn't go away because you signed to play in college. It's still there. And so your ability to handle what this is, because I think it's like anything. This isn't for everyone. You've got to be tough, and you got to be strong-minded. And tough doesn't mean that you're just like you can handle it. It means, to me, tough is like understanding where your weaknesses are, where you kind of need some help and guidance. Like, this is something that causes me problems, and so whether that's talking to somebody about how you deal with failure recovery, or how do I do a better job of just making sure I'm taking care of my body in a good way? Or, how do I stay locked in during a game when I've had 0 for 3 and I've got 3 strikeouts, and do I want the ball hit to me? Or vice versa. I just booted a ball and now I'm the first person up. Am I still thinking about that? I think our players deal with that too. And so I just think like there's no secret sauce to me. You work hard. You recognize your strengths and your weaknesses. I've said this, at places I've talked to, and I talk this to our players. Like, our jobs as coaches, we don't all of a sudden make you better at this level. We're trying to fine tune some things. We really are trying to figure out, what do you do yourself? And my phrase is, I'm going to maximize your strengths and I'm going to minimize your weaknesses. I can't I can't make your weaknesses become your strengths per se. That doesn't happen a lot, and we're not trying to overhaul stuff. Otherwise, I wouldn't have recruited you.
Yeah, that's good. One of the things you were talking about there sparked my brain a lot, which is this like idea of how many good arms you see in the summer. And I think that's just like, I just want to hit that again, because even from the parents' perspective, so for the parents listening, which I know we have some, the amount of summers that I have conversations of like, we'll score 15 runs against someone throwing low 50s at 18U or whatever with no break. And then the next game we'll lose 1-0 or something. And they'll be like, we can't hit. I'm like, well, that's an LSU commit. And, like that girl was throwing 65 to 68 with a real rise ball, which is a little different than that perspective. And I think that's just something so important. And I think probably a bigger topic, because there is some challenges to keeping kids locked in and keeping coaches, myself, locked in, if that's my fifth game of that day, and in preparation, and expecting kids to be locked in for 20 at-bats a day is a lot different than expecting someone to be locked in for 4 at-bats a day. So It's definitely, there are challenges to it, but I think it's such an important understanding of the game, which is it doesn't matter what level you play. You're only facing your age, which doesn't happen in college. So then all of a sudden you're up against everyone. So I think just understanding the difference and being able to judge successes and failures appropriately based on the person across from you, and not always just thinking that you're going to stay at you're going to bat 800 for the weekend off every pitcher is just like not a really great expectation. So I think that was such a good point.
Yeah, I think to go off that, Chris, is like you all played maybe 6, 7. How many weekends you played this summer? Maybe 7,
Yeah, 7 at the most, I think, yeah.
7 at the most, 6, 7. And so for us, we're playing like 12.
Right.
Plus midweeks.
Right.
Well, a bad weekend for me is 12 at-bats. A bad weekend for you is 24.
Yeah.
And so I say that because like it's honestly probably more imperative that your kids have failure recovery skills than ours. Because a bad day for me is 0 for 3, 0 for 4 for the top of the lineup. A bad day for you is 3 games, 3 at-bats, 4 at-bats. You're like 0 for 12. And so like being 0 for a day for you is way more like taxing on the mind for a great player. It is for me. Like my kids is like, okay. And the thing for us is we are then able to immediately turn film, watch film, and we have some systems that we try to do to like talk about like, okay, what happened here? And so for us, journaling is huge. Journaling is huge for us in our at-bats. We train with it. I give every kid a journal at the beginning of the year. I don't ever read them. They can write whatever notes. I said, you can vent against me in those and I'll never know, and you're fine, because those happen on those days. But the one thing I mandate is that we journal every at-bat. And that's whether that's in the fall, in the spring in practice, or then in our games. And so we come back after games, and then we go over all of our at-bats as a team. So I have them come up and they say, hey, this was, and I got this, Coach Crash, Katie Repley. She brought this and she told me, and I loved the idea. They just have them say like, this is what my plan was going into the at-bat. And then we just play the pitches, and they talk about like, I was looking for a pitch middle away to drive because that was the plan. And then they go through it and it's like, well, and you know what? I just went away from the plan. I swung at a pitch inside. I just got to do a better job of sticking to the plan. Or I took the pitch. So you were looking away and then you took the pitch away. Yeah. I don't know. I have to commit more. And that was the pitch I was looking for. I just didn't pull the trigger. And then I was just scrambling at that point because I never got that pitch again. So for me, it allows them to process why maybe the bad happened, what they perceive as bad, and then just move on. So like we just flush it and we move on. This is what we're going to do better. So I think you all don't have that time in the middle of the day. Like you're playing one game after the next game, and they've got 15 minutes to hammer down a hot dog and then try to get it hot. And so I think
it's not funny, but it is funny.
Yeah. And so to me, it's like any ways that you can have to like just reset is huge. We talked about it just this weekend about we had to play a doubleheader, and we had a really good game in the first one. And I felt like in the first couple innings of our second one, we just weren't really there. And, Coach Smith and I were sitting in the dugout in the second while we were hitting. And I said, I think we just need to figure out, we need to take a look at how we do double headers in between. We're feeding our kids. There's a 30-minute turnaround. We're going over the last game. We're giving the lineups. We're telling them the plan. But then just how do you immediately, after a big high in emotion, decompress and then get it turned right back on? And that's hard. The best teams learn how to do it. And so we're trying to do that even, at our level. So, yeah.
I think one of the best takeaways, I obviously ask you for advice a lot, and you happen to be at 2 back-to-back games of mine this fall, which were like, as though you were watching 2 teams, which happens sometimes. And I was asking, I feel like S2 and the work Ashley's done, and the fact that my pitchers have been S2 athletes for a long time in combination with playing for me, I feel like the pitching thing I've got pretty locked down at this point, which is, coming from a hitting person, maybe a little backwards, but because hitting, it does feel challenging in travel ball. I feel like sometimes I'm still trying to navigate how we do the approach. And I asked you for some advice and you sent me some thoughts. And the biggest takeaway for me, which I think I was missing without realizing, and even just some of the things that you're saying there about plan, was what is our expectation here? Like, what does good look like? What are we going for? What's the expectation here? And then make sure that your plan is around that. And so in my mind, hitting the ball hard was obviously our plan, but I was like, is it obvious? Did we talked about this? And so, we sat down and had conversations around a double or a walk. That's our goal. A double or a walk. And what does that look like? And how do I have an at-bat built around that mindset? And so we really got clear on expectations. So I think that there's some ways, at least at our level, which then, I've had this with colleges that have worked with us before. And I've said but how do they know if they're doing good offensively? Is it just if they get a hit? Because that can't be right, because sometimes you get a hit with the worst at bat ever, So yes. It's really measuring expectations, which is what I hear from you. And then the athletes building their plan around those expectations of what does good look like, which I think is really important. And that's where we get into this world where if the parents don't have that expectation, in travel ball, for me, it's then that's we got to also set the expectations for the parents too. But I think that goes a long way for athletes. It's just what are you trying to do here? Who are you as a player? What is your team's, what is your team's makeup? What's your team's goal? And maybe everyone's not a double and walk like mine. Maybe people have different mindsets, but what does that look like? And what are my expectations? And I have exceptions to that. We have some girls that are really fast. So I say you don't have to hit a double. You get on first and you steal. That's your goal, So it's just really owning and knowing that mindset. So I think that's really important. And then they know what they're journaling about. Because I think if you haven't set expectations and you're go talk about your at bat, they're I don't know, it was bad. They struck out, Yeah.
No, I think we talked, I said this a couple of weeks ago to our kids, because we're, they're trying to learn how I want everything here. And, when I came in, I think they thought, I told them I'm not coming in and overhauling swings. I just want you to know that's not fair to you. Some of you, this is your last 12 months of playing this sport. And for me to come in and overhaul things, I just want to talk me through. So I have found our ability to understand approaches and get to a really good place with my teams where they understand the goals, they understand what they're being evaluated on. It has everything to do with the cage conversations we have all the time and the interactions I have with them, and just investing in them as athletes, but also as young women. And I think that is the most important piece of our job, is the investment in them as people. And so having those conversations and just saying, if you ever come to a game, you'll hear me say this all the time. If you're sitting close to the dugout, hey, you have to be willing to miss, and it's okay to miss. I say those two phrases all the time. I said it yesterday when we were playing, kid was having a great at bat. And then we have some approaches that, I could see where she was getting a little bit passive. She was going to that very common phrase of just protect with 2 and not really what we want to do. And so I just told her, said, hey, it's okay to miss here. Get your best swing off. And we talk about your simple best with 2 strikes, your simple best swing, but be willing to miss. And And she just needed to, you could just see like she was just trying not to fail. Like in her mind, I just don't want to strike out. And for me, like, we don't really talk about it. We don't want to strike out, but we don't talk about that being this awful thing that makes me less of a hitter. Like, it's going to happen. And so for me, we talk about winning the extra base hits games. Like, if everyone isn't going to hit double digit home runs at our level, it's just not going to happen. But everyone can hit a double. And I tell my slappers, and we outline it, like, for slappers, it's okay, get on base any way possible. I don't care how. I don't care. Just get on base and then be able to steal a base. Then you've got a double. That's my double for a slapper. And so, and we don't look at average. I get reports, but we don't. I'm sure my players do, because, players are players, but I really don't ever assess batting average. We have a QAB chart, quality at bat chart, that's got a bunch of different things we evaluate on. We evaluate, in addition to just the QAB percentage, like hard hit ball percentage, like what do they do with runners in scoring position less than 2 outs, and then runners in scoring position 2 out RBIs. We track, like, if they get in an 0-2 count, do they still have a QAB? Like, if you get 0-2, what percentage of the time are you still getting a QAB? And we have measurements, like, this is what our ideal is. This is okay. I want you to get a little better. So we have them in green, yellow, red categories. And every Monday, I just update it. And so it went out last night. I got it updated so they know exactly where they stand. And it's a chart ranking them. And so, awesome. Everyone kind of sees it. I'll tell you the other thing. It's just an accountability piece for, like, when you make a lineup out. As a coach, I believe the more you can take bias out of your coaching, the better coach you will be. Yeah. That doesn't mean that at times you aren't just making gut instinct calls. But when I'm making a lineup out, I'm just going to play a hunch. It better be a really, really good hunch, because everything on my numbers says this other kid is the better option. I'm going to go with that kid. It doesn't mean that kid's, because what I think happens is people are like, well, the other kid could have done that. We're asking them to fail 6 times.
Right.
Yeah. Like, you just don't fail 6 times and you're an All-American.
Right.
And so I think it's just understanding. We talk to them. Nothing I tell you, nothing I give you to do, nothing anyone else tells you to do is going to guarantee you success in terms of the result. Nothing we do. All we can do is give our hitters and our players the best chance for success in those at-bats, when they're throwing pitches, when we're positioning them on defense. It's just the best chance. But it's human nature. Like, there's humans involved. We're thinking something's going to happen. If one variable in our game gets changed, like, everything changes. And being able to accept that is the hardest part for players, I think. And I don't think that there are support systems that really promote that. I think that's where...
It's like the umpire zone. Like, this is a conversation we have all the time. It's like, yes, we can hit this kid, but not when she gets a foot off the plate. So we're not going to panic about it. It's just like, it is what it is. So I think it's just like, that's, to me, right when you said that, it's like, can't control the umpire. And sometimes the umpire makes you not be able to hit. So
it's like, and for us, we have a system that kind of gives us every pitch, what it was called, where it was, like, we get in game.
Yeah.
And, it's probably better at our level, but it's not perfect. It's humans.
No, I was watching a game yesterday against 2 Texas schools, so I won't call out the umpire because I don't know. But I turned it on towards the end of the game, and I felt like I already knew how the whole game had panned out, because there were balls being called off the plate, and the team was like, and I was just like, oh, I understand why this is a low-scoring game. So, but you have to adjust. I mean, you can't expect, like, I assume the pitchers at that level are good enough to take advantage of that. So, I mean, it is what it is.
And so then the question becomes, like, okay, do you tell your kids to go after that early in the count, or do you hope she makes a mistake early on the plate? And then, okay, with two, just compete your butt off and see what you can do. And so like, those are the little things. And it's like, okay, so today I went over 3 and the umpire wasn't the best. Like, are you going to let that affect your evaluation of yourself today? Or are you just flush it because those at bats that day are always going to play a part in that batting average number that you're going, that if that's what your goal is, like have a batting average here. Well, you're never going to take away those 3 at bats from there.
Totally.
They're always going to impact it. And so you're letting something external affect that for you. It's
right.
like,
well, I think when you think of grittiness, it's like, okay, how am I going to win the game with that umpire? So it's like, okay, we're going to, we're going to bunt. We're going to try to squeeze. We're going to do things we don't normally do. But like, if you mentally checked out to a bat to go because you're so pissed about the zone, you're not going to be the kid that's going to put this bunt down to get the one run across to win this game. So I think really understanding that element, I think that's huge. All right. Maybe it's a hard question. I don't think it's a hard question, but I have a thing to wrap it up. If you were giving high school athletes who are going through the recruiting process a suggestion of questions that they should ask their potential next program, what are some big things you think that they should ask, investigate, understand about the program they're going to as they're making that decision?
Yeah. So I think this is the one where I think recruits could get so much better at. I really think this is an area they can get better at. So there's 2 things I would say in this. There's 2 parts in my response. I think depending on what are you marketing yourself as? So I think as on the offensive side, you need to ask the coaches, like, what is your offensive plan? Like if I'm a passing quarterback, I would never go play for the team that runs the wishbone.
Right.
And I don't think softball players have gotten to that point where they understand this is what I am as a player. And this is what I need to take myself to the next step and the next level. Because you're going to get 4 more years when you get to our level, most people.
Right.
So
yeah,
how
it's not
can
the
I
end.
yeah, like how can I there are some, but like and that's a different conversation. Hopefully there's a point when they can make a living off this. But this is your 4 years most likely. So where can I go that's going to make this the most enjoyable and the best growth for me as a softball player and as a person? So when they come and they go on the visit, like, what is your offensive plan? Like, what do you value from an offense? What does your offense look like? Are you trying to hit home runs? Are you trying to play short games, a lot of slappers, speed, a mix of both? Like, when I come here, like, how do you see yourself being able to help me as a hitter? Like, I think that's a big one. Like, you're going to these coaches. For us, we try to have offensive development meetings with every kid who comes through the door, say, this is where I see you. This is where I think your strengths are. This is where I think I can help you get better. And these are some things that I think other people might tell you are issues that I don't, or I agree with. I think, how can you help me? And be specific. Like, we're trying to score a lot of runs. Okay, how are you trying to score a lot of runs? Well, I think you're a power hitter. Okay, well, where's my weaknesses? What can you do to get me better? Defensively, where do you see me playing? If somebody else, I see that you have 3 shortstops coming in. Okay. If I don't win the shortstop spot, do you have someplace else you think? Because I think players should be recruiting us as much as we're recruiting the players. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big one. Like, what's the offense going to do? I think the other thing that they need to do is, I think recruits need to start like really trying to decide what do they want out of their experience. Are they going places just because of past success or because of what they're wanting their experience to be like? And so I would tell them the best people to talk to get the truth are past players.
Yep.
Past players. I think talking to our players that are here now is also a good one on the side. Like, talk to them, talk to the recruits, but when you talk to kids who have just left, they have no reason at all to not tell you the truth. There's nothing that's held over their head. And, I'm not saying other schools do that. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying finding that out. I think coming to games and watching and not letting coaches know, like, come on your own and just watch, see that vibe, see if it's real. Like, I do think this, I've always said, women are the best BS detectors in the world. Like, they can detect, so you can see when things are fake. If it's fake energy, if it's fake interactions, you're going to see that and you're going to know it. So I think those are the two big. I think they need to ask more questions as opposed to just being along and trying to be wooed. Because I think on our end, like that's really, really attractive in a player who owns their own development. Because for us at South Carolina, if you can't talk about what you're trying to do as a hitter or a defender or a pitcher, what you're trying to feel when you hit, like what you're trying to do on an inside pitch versus an outside pitch, what your timing pattern is. Like if you don't have some ability to just talk or even just be confident enough to say, you know what, coach, honestly, nobody's ever talked to me about that. I'd love to hear some ideas. Like that is very attractive as opposed to like, I don't know, like not having, because our structure is based on interactions, like us working cooperatively. And if that's not for you, you need to know that, and you need to go find a place where the coach is going to say, do this, do this, do this. And you're just like, okay. And you just do whatever the coach's structure is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really good. I think athletes need more sort of insight into leading that journey and asking the right questions. I think that's great. So I appreciate, we could go on forever. Maybe in the next thing we'll rebuild. Well, in the next conversation, we'll rebuild the whole travel structure. So that will be our next talk. But I appreciate having you. And this will probably be a few weeks. So you are about to kick off SEC play. So actually probably when this will air, it will be underway. So good luck with that. We'll be bringing you on. And we will talk soon.
Thanks, Krista. I appreciate the time.
Well, S2 Nation, thanks for joining another episode of the Bet on Me podcast. Go out today, bet on yourself, and remember, when you bet on yourself, you can't lose.